You return home. There is no silence, no waiting, no ritual. You are told to move on. The world expects normal from you, immediately. Ancient societies feared this moment, because they knew what happens when trauma is rushed, privatized, and ignored. They built systems to absorb war. Modern societies dismantled them. This episode explores why, and what quietly replaced them. You return. There is no silence, no waiting space, no threshold. You step directly from violence into normal life. People ask how you are. They expect an answer. You are told to move on. Ancient societies feared this moment. They built rituals to slow it. Modern societies erased it. This episode begins where the ritual disappears. You return, but nothing slows down for you. You are not met at the edge of the city. No elders. No silence. No fire waiting to burn away what followed you home. You step forward expecting instruction, and instead, the world keeps moving. People pass you without looking. Their pace tells you something before words ever do. Whatever you carry is now your responsibility. Once, this moment was the most dangerous phase of survival. Ancient societies understood this. Not the battle, not the blood, but the return. The moment when a person crosses back into the social body carrying experiences the group itself could not survive untreated. That moment used to be surrounded by structure. Now, it is surrounded by speed. You are told, without being told, to adapt quickly. There is no time to disassemble what happened to you. No space to speak it out loud without consequence. No communal mechanism designed to absorb it. Instead, you are offered efficiency. Clothing. Employment. Paperwork. A schedule. You are slotted back into function. This is not cruelty. It is optimization. And optimization is where ritual began to die. Rituals were slow. They interrupted productivity. They required witnesses. They demanded repetition. They forced communities to pause. As societies grew larger, faster, denser, these pauses became liabilities. You cannot halt a city for a return. You cannot stop an empire for grief. You cannot slow an economy for integration. So the pauses were removed. Quietly. Logically. You feel it immediately. There is no clear boundary between who you were before and who you are now. No symbolic death. No rebirth. Just continuation. Ancient cultures feared this state. They believed an unmarked return was dangerous, not just to you, but to everyone. Because without ritual, identity does not transform. It fractures. You begin to notice something else. No one asks what changed you. They ask what you can do. What skills remain usable. What hours you can work. What function you can still perform. This is the first replacement of ritual. Utility over meaning. If you are functional, you are assumed to be fine. Ancient rituals did not exist to comfort. They existed to contain. To make invisible damage visible. To give the community responsibility for what was unleashed. Modern systems rejected this responsibility. Not because they were ignorant, but because they were efficient. You are now standing at the exact moment where the old world ends. Not with collapse. Not with violence. But with a decision. We do not have time for this anymore. And with that decision, the burden shifts. From the group to you. One truth is clear. Modern societies did not abandon ritual because they evolved past it. They abandoned it because ritual slowed them down. And you are what happens when speed replaces integration. You begin to notice how people talk about the past. Not with hatred. Not even with anger. With discomfort. Old rituals are described as primitive. As things people did before they knew better. Before science. Before reason. You are told, gently, that those systems were replaced. But replaced by what? Once, rituals were engineered. They were not random dances around fire. They were repeatable psychological technologies. They used rhythm to regulate breathing, isolation to reset identity, pain to mock memory, witnesses to prevent denial. But as belief systems collapsed, The mechanisms were forgotten. Only the symbols remained. And symbols without function become superstition. You can feel the shift. The moment when meaning drains out but the shell stays behind. What once transformed identity now looks theatrical. What once stabilized communities now looks irrational. You would feel embarrassed performing it. That embarrassment is not accidental. It is cultural conditioning. As societies centralized power, they became suspicious of rituals they did not control. Local rites, tribal initiations, communal grief ceremonies. These practices bonded people horizontally to each other. Central authorities prefer vertical bonds. To the state, to doctrine, to institutions. Rituals that did not flow upward were slowly delegitimized. Not outlawed at first. Ridiculed. You are taught to laugh at them. To see them as costumes. Folklore. Tourist attractions. Once laughter enters, seriousness cannot survive. And once seriousness is gone, the system collapses. You notice something else. The people most confident dismissing ancient rituals are often the least integrated themselves. They carry anxiety without language, grief without container, anger without release. But they have learned to call this normal. Ritual required belief, yes, but not belief in gods. Belief in process. Belief in repetition. Belief that the group must absorb what the individual cannot. Modern societies replaced belief with explanation. Explanation feels safer, cleaner. But explanation does not transform. It only describes. So you are left with a paradox. The rituals were not abandoned because they stopped working. They were abandoned because people forgot why they worked. Once their effects could not be explained, they were dismissed. You feel the cost now. You are allowed to talk about history, but not to practice it.